pleasure to introduce her. All right.
Thank you all for a warm welcome, especially 8 o'clock. It's been a long work day for me. Can you all hear me? Is there in the back row? Can you hear me? Okay, great. So John Perry was nice enough to introduce me. I'm Mariah. Feel free to just call me Mariah. My last name, Vogelsang, is not always user-friendly for spelling or pronouncing. I work in the Office for Institutional Equity, often called OIE. I think that you met my boss, Yolanda McCarty-Harris. I think that she stuck her head in and gave an initial introduction when you all did some training the Sunday before school started. So Yolanda McCarty-Harris and I both work in the Office for Institutional Equity. We want you to know our faces, and we want you to think of us as a resource, okay? We want you to think of us as somewhere that you can call or contact us, and we can provide you information and resources. You also need to know Yolanda is the Title IX coordinator for this campus, and that's a really big deal. It means that she is charged with overseeing Title IX training. Now, when I say Title IX to student athletes, my guess is you all have heard what Title IX is, okay? Title IX, I'm guessing that you all know, was passed in 1972, and the law has not changed since 1972. But it immediately had impact in gender equity in sports, okay? But the law is one sentence. It's pretty simple. Not all laws are that simple and concise. And in a monumental court case, the Supreme Court said that sexual harassment is sexual discrimination. It impedes someone's ability to attain education, and therefore it is a violation of Title IX. So what I want you to know about Title IX is certainly Title IX still talks about gender equity in sports. But it also talks about things should not happen on college campuses based on sex, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation that impede someone's ability to get an education. Because I know that I'm talking to you all and you all know this, that's what we're here to do. We all are here for you all to get an education. I have a job at Cleveland State because we're an institution where you all are going to get an education. That's the most important thing that we do here. So that's who I am. That's a brief introduction into Title IX, okay? Now, why am I here tonight? Well, I think I'm going to share some really important information with you, and I'd like to tell you that I was going to be here no matter what happened with changes in the law. But there have been changes in the law, and pretty significant changes in the law with regard to Title IX. And so it is now a requirement that we do more on college campuses. So let me spend a minute and tell you about some startling statistics. It is reported that only about 5 to 10% of sexual assault, sexual violence, sexual misconduct, when I'm giving this talk tonight, all of those words can be interchanged, okay? Because those are all types of sexual harassment, which again is sexual discrimination, which relates back to Title IX. So it's only thought that 5 to 10% of cases of sexual misconduct are actually reported that occur on college campuses. And even with that low percentage of report rate, we know that 1 in 5 women is likely to be the victim of sexual assault or an attempted sexual assault while being a member of a college campus, okay? Now, that's a startling number. If I tell you 5 to 10% we think are reported, and we already know that 1 in 5 women, that's not right. So I'm here because we all are on the same team. We're all on Team Cleveland State. We all need to take ownership and responsibility in making this campus as safe as possible. And we all need to do our part. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about sexual harassment, okay? And I already have. And you have to give me a little leeway. I have a very limited amount of time, so we need to talk about some ground rules, okay? Tonight, I'm going to talk about sexual harassment, and I want you to think of 2 things. Sexual harassment is unwanted sexual contact, okay? So it has to be unwanted physical sexual conduct or contact, okay? That's what sexual harassment is. The other thing I have to tell you is I'm going to talk about females typically being the victim, and that's because of that alarming rate. But sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, sexual violence, all of those things can happen to men. Absolutely, they can happen to men. And I told you that only 5 to 10% of women report. You can imagine how hard it probably is for a man to report if it's that hard for females to report. But I don't want you to assume that all victims are females, okay? Absolutely not true. The other thing I don't want in any way to infer is that all males are on college campuses doing these kinds of things, because that's not true. The statistics are that it actually is very few males on college campuses. The problem is that the males who are, and again, it could be females, the individuals who are doing it repeatedly. And colleges and universities have been doing a very poor job of handling these situations and getting rid of individuals who are committing these types of crimes or committing these types of violations of policies, okay? So all of that is the backdrop of these changes in federal law. If you have heard of VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, okay? VAWA is a combination of a couple of things. Some of it is crime on campus, such as Virginia Tech. It's also about these statistics being made public, but Title IX issues are in the news. If you're listening to the news, I assure you, you probably have heard about Title IX issues on colleges and universities. In the spring of this year, the federal government, the Department of Education, who handles these types of issues, said that they were investigating 55 universities in this country for violations of Title IX. That was in the spring. By the end of this summer, the number is up to approximately 80 universities that are being investigated, okay? We don't want that here. We want to set a standard where people go forward. Now, how did those colleges and universities become under investigation? Because of a victim or someone who experienced a violent crime, sexual misconduct, something, felt that they needed to go outside of a university and have their issue heard. And that is absolutely someone's right, okay? But someone had to come forward for those universities to be under investigation. So that's a little bit about, VAWA, Campus Save. There's been significant changes. And to be quite honest, I'm happy to have a more in-depth conversation with any of you at some point about the laws and the changes. But what you need to know is that it's an important topic, and that's why we're here, okay? Did anyone read in the New York Times 2 weeks ago, there was a pretty significant case that was talked about regarding Hobart University in New York and their football team? Anyone hear about that? Certainly Title IX issues were in the news this summer, at the end of the summer, with Ohio State and their band director. Okay, their band director was let go because the band director, he didn't touch anyone, there were no accusations of physical touching, but he allowed a culture that was a violation of Title IX, and he lost his job. Okay? So that's a little bit about why I'm here, a little bit about the ground rules of when we're talking. Okay? I also want to mention to you that we have changes here at Cleveland State. Our student code has been changed so that we can better handle these types of issues on our campus. And that's another really important thing that I want to make sure that you all know. We have a new discrimination harassment policy. It went into effect in the spring of this year. I certainly encourage you all to read it. It can be found on the Office for University Compliance website. That's where all policies are. Or certainly, I would invite you to reach out to Yolanda or myself, and we can have that conversation. Okay? Any questions before I kind of talk a little more specifics about our discrimination harassment policy here at Cleveland State? Okay. So, our discrimination harassment policy, one thing I want you to know is that we go further than what state and federal law requires. In addition to protecting all of the protected classes we're required to, such as race, gender, national origin, religion, we also cover sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. So just want to make you aware of that. The other thing that has changed is that in our office, we are handling the investigations, and there no longer is the need to do kind of a transfer of things from our office over to the Office of Judicial Affairs under the Vice President for Student Affairs, Boyd Yarbrough, if you know him. We have consolidated it to make a more streamlined process. Those procedures and guidelines are posted, and I would certainly encourage you to read those or become aware of them, or contact me and we'll have those discussions. Highlighting some of the changes of that, I want to spend a lot of time, or most of my time tonight, talking about consent, okay? So consent is a big deal because when we go back to unwanted sexual activity, right? Unwanted sexual activity, the key question is consent. Was there an agreement to engage in the activity? Because if not, then the activity is unwelcome, okay? Now, when we're talking about this, I also want to say to you, some people are not going to engage in alcohol or sexual activity. I understand that, and I don't want to presume that everyone in this room is. Even if you are not, my guess is that you're going to come in contact with these types of activities just by nature of you're on a college campus. So even if you don't think this impacts you directly, I assure you this is important information for you to know so that you can be a good member of the Cleveland State community, as well as maybe possibly helping a teammate or a friend or a hallmate or someone that you live in the residence hall with, okay? So, talking about consent, the old definition of consent was no means no. And there was actually a lot of time spent on, did the person say no to said sexual activity, okay? And oftentimes, when there is sexual activity, there's 2 people or very few people in a room. Most of the cases, there are a lot of the facts that everyone seems to agree on, and then it comes to very crucial facts, and people have very different stories of what happened, okay? And it often becomes a he said, she said, or a she said, and a he said, he said. That really is where a lot of time and effort was spent, okay? That is different than consent language today. Because now the consent language is, it is your responsibility, if you are engaging in any type of sexual activity, to make sure that you have an affirmative yes. In order to have that affirmative yes, you must give consent. If someone is intoxicated, they can't give consent. If someone is under the influence of drugs, they cannot give consent. If someone is under the age of 18, they cannot give consent, okay? Coercion, duress, those are all things that prohibit someone from giving consent. And so Christine has been nice enough to help me illustrate some of the things about consent. So, we're going to talk about keys, okay? We're going to talk about keys. Yes, I know. Now, we're talking about keys, but I certainly hope that you can draw correlations between different types of conversations. Okay, bear with me. Okay. Are you ready? I know, I got you awake with that. I'm glad. Okay. Hey, Christine, can I have your keys? Was there consent? No. I asked, can I have your keys? Why was there not consent? both go over to the field together. So let me get this right. I'm allowed to use your keys, but only to go into your office to get my bag. Can I do anything else? No. Are you sure? Yeah. If I ask you anything, will your answer change? I want you to come back after you go to my office. And then we're both going to walk to the field. Both going to the field. Okay. And I only have consent, right, to go to her office, get the bag, and then we have to go back and walk to the field together. If I go anywhere but her office to get the bag, was there consent? No. No. Now, I know that keys are maybe a silly example, but I hope that illustrates the point, okay? Engaging in sexual activity is a conversation you should have. Absolutely, okay? And if you're not willing to engage in a conversation like what I engaged in with Christine about what consent I had to use her keys, then you should not be engaging in sexual activity with that person, okay? And that's plain and simple. And let me tell you, if you think it's going to be awkward to have that conversation with someone that you're going to potentially be engaging in sexual activity with, I assure you that conversation is much less awkward than having that conversation with me of what happened, what you talked about, what you had consent to do, okay? Oftentimes then, if people, do file a complaint, sometimes attorneys get involved. If attorneys get involved, usually they want to be paid. If you're not able to pay for an attorney on yourself, then suddenly you're now having a conversation not only with me about your sexual activity, but also potentially with your parents, okay? Or whoever it is that's going to be footing the bill. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying to you, I think you want to have the conversation up front. Because the next day or later that night, if the other person that you engaged in sexual activity with has a different version of the story, that is potentially a really big problem for you, because our policy is very clear. Yes and only yes, or some type of affirmative action, okay? So if you ask someone to engage in kissing, okay, and they lean in or they lean forward and they initiate kissing you, I realize they didn't say yes, okay, but I would say that that is an affirmative action, okay? Silence is not an affirmative action. Absolutely not. What questions do you have about consent? There's got to be something. Yeah?
Which person asked for the keys?
What's that?
Which person asked for the keys?
In our hypo?
Or yeah, I guess it's what?
It could be either. I mean, here's what I think. I mean, I realize, okay, that things don't always happen in this world of you know where things are gonna go, okay? I realize, and I hear this from people when they're talking to me, one thing led to another. Or we were just going to hang, or we were just going to chill. And guess what? Some people think when you invite them to go hang, that they're just gonna hang with you. You're gonna talk or watch movies or eat snacks or whatever. And some people, when you say we're gonna go hang, they assume you know what we're talking about, okay? Let me tell you, if you're gonna use vague words like hang or chill, you better be really clear that the other person knows what you're talking about, okay? Because if it's not clear, that is a problem for whomever is not the person who the next day is regretting that activity. Okay? Let me give some more real-life scenarios, okay? The Steubenville case, and I know this is high schoolers, okay? The Steubenville case, that got a lot of national attention. I believe it was last year. That girl engaged in drinking, okay? And at some point, she was so unconscious, they were videotaping her. And my understanding from what I read is she wasn't exactly sure what happened to her the next morning. She had an idea, it wasn't good, right? But she didn't even know what happened, and then the videos were released, and that's how she figured out. That's not consent, okay? It's not consent. What other questions do you have about consent? Here's another stat I want you to know. It is rare that someone experiences sexual misconduct, and again, sexual violence, from someone they don't know. Most likely, it's going to be someone who's on a team, I'm being honest. It's going to be someone that's on a team. It's going to be someone that you know you're in class with. It's going to be someone that you've seen around because you're all going to the same parties. It's most likely going to be an acquaintance. Certainly, the random, and the most common example is a rape, right? A random rape, those certainly happen. But those are the exceptions on college and university campus. It is most likely going to be someone you know. Why is that really important for me to tell you? Because it makes it that much harder for someone typically to come forward. Because they don't want to go through the process, the stigma, the shame, the embarrassment of going through a process and saying that something unpleasant or horrific happened to them, and then they're going to have to face teammates, peers throughout that process. Okay? Be aware. Now, I want to relate this back to you, and I want to leave it on a more positive note. Okay? So, all of you need to take ownership. Okay? Here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be really honest with you, and I'm going to tell you, I'm really glad that I went to college before smartphones. I am. You all live in a world that there are some things that I don't envy, and one of them is smartphones. Okay? I'm not going to condone bad activity. I'm never going to tell you it's a right thing to do. But why people engage in that kind of activity and videotape it is beyond me. Why people have teammates that they know bad things are happening to them, or they're drunk and they're making bad decisions and they're acting silly and they're allowing other people to videotape it is beyond me. Not only is it not funny when you really think about it, but in today's world, you most likely are setting up that you're going to have really good evidence when there are charges against someone, okay? You also are probably making it harder for them to get gainful employment someday, okay? So really, I would encourage you to think about the activities that you're doing. I would encourage you to have a plan. We are all on this team together, okay? So not only are you on your respective teams, but you're also student athletes. You are leaders on this campus. Absolutely. Do you know why you're leaders on this campus? Because all of you have attained athletic ability to a level that you're able to participate in sports in college. Kudos to you. I mean, that's really impressive stuff. That's not most people. And my guess is the reason why you are able to play sports at a college level is because you're really good at some things, okay? And whether that thing is swimming or basketball or wrestling or golf, guess what? Sports are an analogy for life. The same things it takes to be good in your sport, if you can translate those skills, you're going to be good at life, okay? Because being a student athlete is being a leader. So I charge all of you to take your role on this campus community really serious. And I think that you all have more responsibility than the average student on this campus, okay? Some of that is because, yes, you're representing us when you put on those uniforms and you compete in sports. But it's also because you all are better than the average person at doing the life skill stuff, the hard work, the performing under pressure. All of that stuff, you all excel at. So take care of each other, okay? Don't leave teammates in bad situations. If a teammate says to you, hey, we're going to go to this party and I think that Joe is there, or I think Samantha is there, whomever, and they say, I'm interested in that person and I'd be okay with going home with them. That may be okay. Certainly it's, with consent and the person's not intoxicated and all the things we've already talked about, okay? But that may be okay. And I think it's important for you to share your plans and what you're okay with your teammates and the people that you're going out with. Because if you, as a teammate, see someone going home with anyone other than who they told you they were willing to go home with, you stop it. You stop it. And I assure you, there is no meaningful relationship that was going to happen, okay, that now is not going to happen because you stopped them from going home that night, okay? Now, any questions that you have for me? Are you sure? The one thing I didn't talk about that I wanted to mention briefly is our old student code was really specific about we only had the ability to handle matters that happened on this campus. And to be honest, it had a little bit of language that we could get to some other things, but it was pretty limited. That is done. The new language is much broader, and we are now able to handle on this campus anything certainly that happens on this campus, happens near this campus, happens to our campus community members when they're traveling, such as you, to away competitions. And the other thing that is really a big change, we're allowed to handle things that happen on this campus that may have happened somewhere else, but they affect this campus. So if anyone goes home and they live out of this area, and they get a charge picked up while they're at home, okay? We can handle that here. If whatever charge it is that person gained, if it affects and endangers our campus community, we absolutely can take action here, because the new standard with all of the regulations is we need to keep our campus as safe as possible. And again, that all starts really with you. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I hope that at a minimum, you think of Yolanda and I as a resource that when issues come up or you have questions, contact us. Oh, I apologize. One other thing that I wanted to say, there are confidential resources on this campus. I am not one of them, okay? And your coaches, your trainers, your athletic administrators, they are not confidential resources either. All of these new regulations have made it very clear that there are people on this campus that if we find out about information, we have to do something about it. We have a duty to act. We are responsible employees, okay? So if you want to talk to someone and you don't want anyone to know, you need to make sure that you are going to a confidential resource. And part of my responsibility is to make sure if you don't know who a confidential resource is, that I direct you to that person. Certainly on campus, our counseling services or the health and wellness center, those are confidential resources. If those resources are not what you're looking for, we certainly have the ability to make referrals to other agencies and providers in this area, or even national organizations that are confidential resources. Okay? Again, thank you for your time.
The kid I just talked to. Who's the kid I talked to? Tennis player? His voice just carries. It's unfortunate for him. That's really what it was. Huh?
Alright, hi everybody. Hi everyone. My name is Alex. I work for the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. I am much less of a bummer than my organization sounds. When you hear Rape Crisis Center, it sometimes sounds like we are a real buzzkill at parties. I think we get along fine now. So today we're going to talk a little bit about addressing some of the issues that Mariah talked about, and as a team we're going to kind of hopefully give you some skills to leave here with. But I'll just briefly say I'm Alex. I'm the Director of Prevention and Outreach Programs at the Rape Crisis Center, and these are my colleagues. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Brian. I'm a prevention specialist for the center. I've been with them for 9 years. Thank you for being here tonight. We won't take up that much of your time. I don't think we'll be longer than 3, maybe 4 hours.
Hi everybody. Can you guys hear me back there? My name is Courtney. I'm a prevention specialist as well as Brian. And contrary to what we said, we will not be here for 3 or 4 hours. I promise. I don't like stuff that's 3 or 4 hours. We will not keep you for 4 hours. But today we're going to talk about something. We're working on a catalyst. Does anybody know what that word is? Ever seen it, heard it? Raise your hand, touch the sky. No? No clue? Well, I'm going to tell you. A catalyst is a chemical or a person that speaks of progress or change.
All right, so what we need from you is to become catalysts. For most of you in this room, the issue of sexual violence, the issue that we deal with every day, is not abstract. I would love to believe that most of you hear about it and you think, that's kind of the thing that happens on Law and Order, and it's really sad, and it's awful when I read about it. In the general population, 1 out of every 3 women and 1 out of every 6 men experience sexual violence. I would love to tell you that my connection to the issue of sexual violence isn't personal either. I'd love to tell you that when I was in college, I heard the statistic 1 in 4, which was the current statistic at the time, that 1 in 4 college women experience sexual violence from the time they turn 14 until they graduate from college. And it turns out 1 in 4 is a pretty impressive number. And to my mind, I thought, I didn't want anybody to experience sexual violence. I thought, I'm a pretty good person, I've never heard about it, it's just that thing that you hear about on the news sometimes. And then I went to a presentation and heard that statistic and started asking friends. And what I found out was a huge percentage of my friends had been impacted by sexual violence. Whether it was my close female friend telling me about her teammate who had sexually assaulted her, whether it was my close male friend who told me when he and his family, when he was growing up, he and his family had to move because his brother had been sexually molested by a neighbor, and they felt unsafe, and the whole town blamed them for what had happened. I'd love to tell you that it's not personal to me, that just these friends told me and it was enough. But then the summer after I graduated from college, I heard about how my aunt was sexually assaulted when she was a teenager, and my parents were the ones that took her to counseling. And then at the end of the summer, my sister was sexually assaulted. So I would love to tell you that we are not all connected, but the fact is that we are. And all of those things brought me to this work professionally, emotionally. I'm very connected to the issue of sexual violence. It's what I do professionally. But what really brings me here today is I've been married for about a year. My wife and I are expecting a baby this spring. Right? I just laughed because I'm sperm. I think that's what this happened. And here's what I need from you all. Here's what I need from you all. I am petrified of envisioning my child your age, the way that the world is now. And maybe that's not fair to you. But I have to believe that because of what we do tonight, what you do on this campus, what you do in the communities that you leave this school and build, will make them safer. I belong to a group called 1 in 4 in college, and my dream is that my kid joins the group, and they say, Dad, I joined this group that talks about sexual violence on college campuses, trying to reduce it, working with men and women to reduce it, and say, oh, you joined 1 in 4. I say, no, I joined 1 in 40. And I think because of what you do tonight, what you do on your teams in this community, we can make that a reality. We don't have to wait. Every time I've ever done a presentation, I've been in groups of people, I hear someone say to me, someday our children's children will have less sexual violence, will have less dating violence, will have less stalking. I don't want to wait for that. You want to wait for your kids to benefit? Let's make it happen now. There's a sense of urgency to this. not just because there's change in policy, not just because people are being forced to talk about it, but because really and truly, this is a moment where we can turn our culture over. So embrace it with me. Join me tonight, and even though it's late, even though you were probably forced to be here, even though you were probably forced to be here, even though you aren't really sure how this is going to turn out for you, you have some questions, maybe some feelings in your gut, come with me. Come close to my point of view, just with mine. I trust you that it will be worth it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, I want to take some polls here. We use this polling software called Poll Everywhere. Everybody ever used it before? No? Right there. Nice. So, Poll Everywhere is a really interesting thing. It helps us capture in real time some answers to anonymous questions. So if you have your cell phone that you can secretly playing on the whole time, pull it out or keep it out. And this is our test question. So if you could have one superpower, what would it be? I'm a comic book reader from way back. Anybody watch Captain America with the soldier? You haven't said what you guys said. And Cleveland is all over it. Cleveland is all over it. So, to join this poll, all you gotta do, you're texting to the number 22333. We have a couple of polls. The whole time you're just going to be texting to the number 22333. And in order to participate, all you have to do is answer the code that you already seen this. Seeing people answer here. If you wish you could fly, 943-329. We can move this to 943-330, 943-331 if you are very honest. Turn it to object 943-332. Be super strong, 943-333. Alright, we're seeing this roll in here, okay? Lots of reminds, lots of line. Approximately, you don't have texting in your plan. If you don't have texting in your plan, it will ask you to say, sorry, this is going to be Alright. This is all very intriguing, right? I basically do this so that you can get practice at knowledge course. Alright. Keep it down to the goal. Most people would rather fly, a lot of people are really nice. The goal of this is to stay honest, right? Good afternoon. Alright. Wonder please. The goal of this is to be honest so we can get people to participate at their comfort level. Some of these things still a little gradually rolling in. The minds have been flying neck and neck, so whoever hasn't participated yet, they're gonna tilt the scales here. That's our funny question. And sometimes when I do this, I pretend like I can sort of mind read the crowd. And like, oh, most of you would like to read minds. You're all this type of person. It's not. I'm just lying. I'm just pretending. You want to go to the next poll down at the bottom? Yeah. Awesome. All right, this is the same. You're having a conversation with the same code. And these are a little smaller, so I'm sorry if you guys are reading them. I'll go through them really fast. But I want you to answer this question honestly. Don't look around and see what other people are answering, but truly, what other people are answering, but truly think about for yourself what you believe here. How much do you believe we can really reduce the number of people who experience sexual assault and dating violence? I'm totally certain we can. 144-298. I'm pretty certain 144-299. I'm doubtful, but hopeful 144-301. I don't think we can, but we should try 144-320. And how much you want to write in your own? Don't know. Don't believe it. Whatever it may be. A lot of people say I'm doubtful, but hopeful. All right. All right. A lot of folks say I'm doubtful, but hopeful. few. Alright, so how many people lived in Toledo over the past year and a half? Okay. About a year and a half ago, one of the worst cases of sexual violence, domestic violence, kidnapping, was uncovered on the Cleveland's Near West Side. You're going to see more happening. They're showing 19 that Jesus and buried these women who have been missing for a decade were found. And if you were a Clevelander, at the time, I was traveling around working in college campuses all over the place. I was in Washington, D.C. when they found this house and they found them. And I thought, my heart was immediately here. It was immediately, this is my hometown. And I can't believe this happened here. I can't believe this has been happening. And what people were saying about us, what's wrong with Cleveland, that this happened here. And what we kept saying for us at the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center was that we had a moment to change the dialogue. And the dialogue is, what's wrong with Cleveland that has happened? What's right with Cleveland that we are going to change our culture so that this never happens, and we have an open and honest dialogue about how much sexual violence actually happens. So that's the goal, to carry with us some hope. So what we need, instead of thinking about things historically as victim, perpetrator, and trying to educate people as victims or perpetrators, we've forgotten in our math that there's other people there. There's other bystanders around, people who witness something happening. And that's where our goal is for today. The fact is that the vast majority of people are never going to hurt someone. And the majority of people are not going to be hurt. But most of us are going to be in a position to intervene. And most of what we're going to talk about is intervening in cases of sexual assault, dating violence. But some of the skills transfer over to other things that might, in your gut, make you feel like you want to do something. So we're going to talk about being an active bystander. A bystander is simply someone who sees something happen. There's a few different kinds of bystanders in here. Someone being interviewed, there's someone using their phone, right? Every time something happens, there's a bunch of different types of bystanders. But we want to shift the conversation to being engaged bystanders. That's what we mean when we say a catalyst. When Courtney brings up the idea that we are hoping for people who will change, to speed this change along. That's what we mean when we say catalyst. If you've ever taken chemistry, you know what we're going to do about that. So, what I started off here saying was that we are all connected. Believe me when I say, with numbers like 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men in the general population experiencing sexual assault, you know someone who's experienced sexual assault. You do. If you've never heard somebody say it, it might be because you haven't been listening. I guarantee you do. And if you don't right now, you will. It'll be your future dating partner. It'll be your future friend, your cousin, your sibling. Maybe one of your parents experienced it and never told you, and they will once you're out of college. But trust me when I say you know someone who's experienced sexual violence. We are all connected to the issue of sexual violence. Mariah mentioned Steubenville. I actually went to Steubenville and did some educational sessions this past April with mostly young men. And we talked about this issue of being a bystander and how they can be better bystanders. Lots of great dialogue, lots of good questions. Worked with all the teachers to help them do that program even when we're gone. If I were to... That's a loud ring. That was like shouting ring. Okay. Seriously, I was doing this talk one time, and a woman's phone rang, and actually, no, it wasn't even a phone. It was her Pandora app went off and would not turn off, and no joke, the song that was playing was "What a Man" by Salt and Pepper. Right? And so I'm up here, and I get this talk, into it, and it's like, "What a man." And I was like, "Turn me on." And she was like, she was like hiding her face and she was trying to did that thing where you try to pretend that your phone didn't just go off and someone else is like, it's really home, right? And then she realized it was her Pandora, it was not going off shit around. So I got off topic. When I went down to Steubenville, when I went down to Steubenville, I met a whole bunch of people. sexual assault that happened here. I didn't find anyone who would say, oh, it's just a thing that like 3 teenagers were involved with. Everyone in town is connected to the issue. Everybody had an opinion, and everybody was hurt by it. You know, what the media said about Steubenville in many ways was sort of a smaller version of what has happened here. People were asking, what's wrong with Steubenville? You know, why do they tolerate this type of sexual violence? And people were deeply and profoundly hurt. Everybody was connected to it. And I think about it in terms of that Dr. King put best, where he said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garden of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And so thinking about it, when one of us is hurt, thinking about it for your team, when one person is hurt, everyone suffers to some extent, or at least is impacted by it. They're connected to that person. As a community, whether you're talking about just Cleveland State, you're talking about your team, you're talking about the town where you grew up, when something happens there, it is felt. And we're all impacted by the issue of sexual violence. So Brian's going to take a second here and talk us through a visualization that will make it a little more personal.
I realize it's very intense and about an hour now, so just make sure you're breathing. Everyone can take a deep breath right now. Really hard breath.
Deep breath.
Picture with your mind's eye the person you care about the most. Let's take a moment to just think about that. They're at a party, walking on the street, or alone in the room. When they're approached and assaulted by a man. Now imagine that there's another man in the story, a bystander, who sees what's going on and is in a position to do something, but chooses to do nothing. This bystander either watches or walks away.
So when Brian does that visualization of lots of audiences throughout the area, imagine the person that you love most in your life, and someone seeing it happen as clear as you see me today. And I'm immediately confronted by 2 things. The first is that I think we can do better, right? As a society, as a culture, seeing something harmful happen and walking away is not the best that we can do. And what I'm uncomfortably confronted with, the second is, how many times I have been someone who walked away when I should. When I do this program, it's easy to fall into a mode where we simply start talking and we make it seem like what we're asking is easy. It's not. It's not easy to stand up for what's right and for your values. If it were, everybody would do it and we wouldn't have violence that we have currently. If it were easy, we wouldn't be here. The fact is, it's not easy. I think at the time when I first moved back to Cleveland, I went out of state in school. I went to the state of Virginia, the nice, old, liberal arts college. I came back here. I lived downtown. And where I lived downtown, I lived in an apartment building. It was like one of those ones that had been recently renovated. I think maybe get a class player or 2 in there, but that would be just something that I told people so that it seemed cool where I lived. I don't think that was actually true. In the middle of the night, I heard the mess sound. Right? I don't know how many of you know what I mean when I say that. But very simply, I heard what I know means mess sound. Right? I heard someone being hit, I heard things scratching at 3 really big. And I thought, what kind of world do we live in with that man who sees the potential target? I know what that feeling of hopelessness is. I know that feeling of, do we have to keep hearing about this? There's nothing that I can do. It doesn't matter anyway. Finding the comments made while we're talking about this that makes it easier to avoid the realities of your own life. And I challenge you to think about your hope. But the biggest indicator of whether this campus culture will change around the issue of sexual violence is your hope. Do you believe that what you do matters? Most of us, when we're kids, we believe that everything we do matters. We believe that when we first use the bathroom matters. Like, we make a big deal about it. Our parents laugh and make a big deal about it, right? As we're like learning how to read, we read the Golden Book, and everybody kind of makes a big deal about it. And we're like, I'm the best ever. And then as we get older, we just come to sit and we're like, it doesn't matter. Why bother? Right? And so I encourage you to tap into that part of you that is childlike, that says, what I do does matter. It does matter whether I get involved or not. That my voice, my abilities, my influence can make a difference. And sometimes we've got to be reminded of why we should hope. And one of the main reasons we should hope is because we outnumber them. What I mean when I say that is, people who commit violence, they're in the minority, a small minority. For every one person who commits violence, there are 20, 30, some studies say as many as 40 of us who never will, never could, never would hurt someone. So think about it in this room. If we had a potential perpetrator on one end, a potential victim on the other, 40 of us standing in between. Hard to imagine that perpetrator ever gets to that. And that helps me. Most of the time, we believe we're the only ones. We believe we're the only ones who want to stand up for what's right. Believe when someone is abusive or when someone is going to do something that meets the definition of assault, in our gut we feel like something's wrong. But we think if we say something, we're the only ones who are making a big deal about it. Nobody else can possibly feel that way. And the fact is most people are right there with us and wishing that someone else would do something too. We don't do things for a lot of good reasons. We have all of these obstacles to getting our way. One of the key obstacles is that we don't recognize when something is about to happen. Mariah covered a lot of this today, but we're going to pass on, we're going to go over it again real fast. Some of the things that you can cue to that potentially would make you say a sexual assault or dating violence is about to happen, so that you could recognize the earliest warning signs, not right in the immediate danger time, but the earliest warning signs. So I'll pass this off to Brian and Courtney to discuss. Thanks.
So yeah, we won't sound a little repetitive. I think it's totally important to talk about tonight. I think when we hear about sexual violence, we hear stories already, like the one that went all over the news last week, on the website, what happened last week. We always hear about the boogeyman in the alleyway, the stranger in the car. I don't want to make light of that. That happens. It's awful. It's traumatic. But most rates occur between two people who know each other. At least 4 out of 5 rates. Sexual violence is a crime of opportunity. Someone gets to know someone, they put trust in that person, in that relationship, they let their guard down. You don't get me wrong, we know stranger rate happens, but stranger rate is the most uncommon type. Doesn't that seem to be one we always hear about? Because it's fear. The fear is what sells in our society. The media looks out there. They tell the women in this room about house keys, car keys, something sharp between your fingers when you're walking down the street at night, right? They tell women you're walking out your car, all around your car, in the back seat. It's not a bad idea if they feed that to you. Like it's going to happen to you at any moment. When guys, in reality, women in our lives are more likely to be sexually assaulted than someone they don't trust and love. Up until last fall, for the last decade, I've been out carrying these statistic every 2 minutes in America. And I think it was a CSU report that came out last fall that said actually every 23 fear of not being believed. That's huge. Guilt, shame, comparison, self-blame. Also keep in mind the effects of it. They can last a lifetime. Depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, alcohol and drug use, eating disorders, and suicide.
Sexual violence can also take place in relationships. Some more talks about that, possession or controlling is the difference between being like, oh, that's babe, and being like, hey, I said that's babe, I put it in all caps, I meant that, where do you think you're going, Or that's me a crush, and I said, no. I said man crush every day, you're mine, things like that. So those are some things to be on the lookout for.
Alright, so whether it's in the context of a relationship, whether there is some of those abuse behaviors that are early on in like control-seeking behaviors. Courtney talked about the applying someone with alcohol for the purposes of making them incapacitated, take advantage of them. These are some of the warning signs we might see, right? And we're just as likely to be connected to someone who is doing an action that in our gut feels wrong, as we are to be connected to the person who's having that action done to them. I think sometimes we forget we could potentially influence our friends when they're doing something that is dangerous or hurtful. We sometimes forget that influence that we potentially have. But I challenge you, when you hear about sexual violence, dating violence, when you hear about those early warning signs, when you have that friend who can't let that relationship go, still constantly following that person, texting, trying to control them, when you have that friend whose relationship you feel like is unhealthy, the way they treat their partner, you have that friend who has some of the behaviors that make you seem kind of creepy, like they like getting someone drunk for the purposes of taking advantage of them. When you have those situations arise, we have to confront whether we do something or we do nothing. And I'd love to tell you that we can be neutral. We can say, well, I'm not doing anything bad. It's none of my business, right? But the fact is, we either do something or we do nothing. And when we wash our hands of the conflict between the powerful and the powerless, it means we side with the powerful, not to be neutral. That in fact, we can't be neutral. So I encourage you to be thoughtful in your choice. As I described, I have had times where I have not intervened. And I'd love to tell you that I felt neutral after because I knew I did not. So I challenge you to take responsibility for that choice, whether do something or do nothing. And know that doing nothing is okay. Most people do nothing most of the time. But those of us who decide to start doing something, potentially, enough of us start doing it, we are going to keep sexual assaults and dating violence from happening. It's not just one choice, though. There's all of these things that get in our way. There's all these obstacles, not just to knowing what it is or feeling like it's our responsibility to do something, but there's actually documented psychological things, we'll get back to that in a second, that keep us from intervening. One of them is, they did all this research in the 60s and 70s, all those psychology experiments that you totally can't do anymore because they're so unethical. Like, people die or get really hurt, and if you're anybody that's like a psych major, read about the Stanford prison experiments, or read about Stanley Milgram's shocking experiments. Maybe some of you have heard of some of these before. Totally messed up stuff you can't do it anymore. Anyway, one of the things that they documented, this is sort of in the wake of the Holocaust, there's a social psychology movement that starts to say, what kind of a world do we live in where a world of ostensibly good people let other people be hurt? And they documented all these things. And one of them was, when there's a lot of people around, we are less likely to do something. If I were to collapse right here on stage, I don't know why, but I'm not planning on that. But if I did, most of you would sit kind of awkwardly for several seconds. The vast majority of you. You'd be kind of like, should I? We gonna? No? We're good? Or somebody should do, whatever, right? And eventually someone comes up and it's like less awkward, you're like, somebody else did it. It's not because you're bad. It's not that you're a bad person for that, right? It's literally when there's an incident that happens, it gets diffused to everybody else. And so everyone's like, well, surely he's got these people that work with him. Maybe they know him better. Maybe they ought to do something. Why aren't they doing something? What's going on, right? We think that someone else must be closer or more connected to the situation than we are. So we don't do something. One of the other things is we are scared of being embarrassed. We call this evaluation apprehension. This is the technical term for it. Evaluation apprehension is when we think, gosh, I'm going to totally mess this up. And I'm going to make a big deal out of nothing. And I'm really going to embarrass myself. And when I search myself and I tell that story about not intervening when domestic violence was happening in my communal apartment building, this was the main reason. I'm like, I'm going to make this big deal, now I'm going to have to run into these people by the mailbox, and that will make for an awkward scene. Today, sorry about getting you in trouble for not smiling saying, right? It can be a little awkward. I was worried about embarrassing myself so much that I didn't do anything. This is real. This doesn't make someone a bad person. It makes them a normal person. The next one. We don't like it when we don't conform. We want to fit in with the norms of everyone. Most people are not people who stand out every minute of every day. Sometimes, especially you all, like on the field, there's some opportunities for that, but most of the time we obey conventions, right? We like to follow the norms of any group. That's really normal. And more especially, we want to follow the norms of our friends, our peer group. We feel like we can't possibly get involved in our friends would make fun of us. We would be on the outs with them. Maybe our friend is the one who is doing something that is wrong, and we're worried about getting that person upset with us. Whatever the reason is, peer pressure is one of the key reasons that we don't get involved. And we think peer pressure is kind of dumb. How many of you went through like DARE in high school? Everybody go through DARE? Yeah, DARE is like peer pressure exists and don't succumb to it. Right? There's like no skills. There's like DARE is also one of, I don't know if anybody is like tied to the program DARE. DARE's like the least effective prevention method that's ever been measured. It's like it was like, here's what this drug looks like. Don't do that. You want to see this drug? This is what it looks like. Don't do it. It's like, it doesn't work at all. It's like literally educating people on how to use drugs. And then there's like, and Derek would be like, your friend is going to make you want to try that. And you'd be like, okay, well, I'll try that. How many of you ever had your mom say something to you along the lines of, if all your friends jumped off the bridge, would you go to? Anybody ever have your mom actually get a few up there? I had that a couple of times. Let's be honest with our parents. Next time we get asked that question, say the answer is yes. Right? Oh, you mean the group of friends that I've known my whole life, that I played sports alongside, I've led, sweat around, believed in, that they're doing something. If they're jumping off the bridge, I'm going with them because whatever's chasing them is scarier than jumping off that bridge. Let's be real. Our friends set the tone for us in so many ways. And so we have to have some skills to be able to differently, even if our friends are doing it. The fact is that this kind of all goes together to create an effect, but this is sort of the key challenge for us? When does something cross the line? When we might have all these psychological obstacles, but we notice, right? When does something for us feel like we ought to do something? The first thing we ought to do is take a second look. If in our gut we feel like something is wrong, take a second look at it. Can't hurt, right? Trust your gut. The second one is checking in. We don't normalize checking in our culture nearly enough. Just as simple as everything all right? Are you doing okay? Whether it's with our friend who's going to do something stupid or our friend who's going to have something bad happen, right? We don't normalize checking in with those people nearly enough. And it can be really easy to just get in the habit. Everything all right? And mean it, right? A lot of the time when we say that, we don't really want to handle any of the consequences that might come with that. And the last one is, what if it was someone that I loved? If in a situation, you put someone that you loved in the same situation, your sibling, your partner, whoever, and you feel like, I wish somebody would do something to get them out of that situation. I think we ought to rise to the level we would want someone else to rise to if it were our loved one on the line. So those are the things that I ask you. These sort of like the eye test for any possible situation. When it might be necessary to go over or around these obstacles. And so all of these obstacles, all of that eye test basically adds up to this thing called the bystander effect. This bystander effect is, sometimes called the code of silence, called snitch, whatever it may be, depends on sort of your what you've heard it throughout your life. But the bystander effect is sort of the psychological term for this, right? And we don't want to get involved. We have a lot of good reasons why, right? I love this little baby. The bystander effect is real. It is psychologically done, well documented, and it applies to all of us. We are not immune from the bystander effect. So, what the heck can we do about it? Well, let me ask that whole question. You want to ask that with us? Courtney, sorry. Which of these things are most likely to keep you from interviewing? So you must have gone out, I know so you've been messing around already. I have eyes and I'm standing in front of all of you. So let's see. What would most keep you from intervening in a situation involving sexual violence or dating violence? Is it you're worried about being embarrassed? Just to talk about the same number here. If you're worried about being embarrassed, 144-279. There's lots of people around. I'm not sure I would notice 144-284. Oh yeah, I might not notice number 3. Sorry, lots of people around. Someone else to take care of it. I'm worried about what my friends think. 144-288. I'm kind of shy. 144-289. I'm worried about my safety as a clear winner. It's almost every time I do this. Right? I'm worried I'm going to do something. That person is going to direct that action right at me. Right? All right. So we're seeing that one populate. Seeing that I'm shy. There's lots of people I'm embarrassed. All right, so we're getting little bits of numbers here and there. And this is really helpful information. What a lot of programs will do is say, oh, you're shy? All right, we'll just get over it because someone's in danger. I cannot make you be unshy. If I knew how to do that, I would do that already. Right? Same way, if you are someone who cares about what your friends think, aka you're a human being, I cannot pep talk that out of you. I can't make you say, like, well, screw what your friends are doing. Forget them. They're not real friends. What? It's like, these are my friends. I love them. For now. Unless they're just now. Right? Safety is one of the key ones. And I cannot tell you that every single time you get involved, it is going to work magically. What I can tell you is, we can start to notice these things at the earliest possible moment. We can listen and pay attention to our friend's behavior to see if they have any problematic attitudes. Right? I'm going to the party with this guy, but I know that sometimes he's kind of messed up and likes to try to get girls drunk and try to hook up with them. Like, I'm just going to hang around. Right? My intervention has to be tailored to avoid provoking an unsafe situation. So that means I'm not going to probably be someone who's going to be threatening them, who's going to be like all in their face or confrontational. We're worried about our safety. Confrontational interventions don't always work. And so all of these obstacles, whether we are shy, whether we are worried about our safety, So let's talk about what those options are. Thanks, Courtney. We'll go to mine. We call these the 3 Ds: direct, distract, delegate. This helps us understand what we can possibly do in these situations. Right? So, I don't know why it's not. Okay. Direct. Direct does not have to look like a distinction, but literally a directed intervention is doing or saying something yourself to the person that you think is either doing the action that is harmful or going to hurt someone, or the person who is having that action done to them. So, that might look like simply going up to the person who's at risk and saying, hey, you doing all right? Why don't I get you out of here? Right? Are you sure that you're safe? I'm kind of worried about you. Right? Going up to the person who has the unhealthy behavior and saying simply like, knock it off. You're embarrassing yourself. Everybody here is really weirded out. Just get on out of here. Right? Whatever it may be. The direct intervention might not work for those of us who are worried about our safety, who are shy, or worried about confrontation. But for a lot of us, it's really effective. Right? If you're not that worried about it, you might be able to pull off a direct intervention. It doesn't have to happen right in that moment, by the way. It can happen the next day. Hey, last night you had some behaviors that kind of messed up. I wanted to talk to you about. Right? I wanted to explain to you why this doesn't have a place on our team, it doesn't have a place in our community. However, it sounds natural, because you probably want to talk like me and a 31-year-old man. The next one, distract. Distract is my favorite, because as you can tell, I don't care about making a fool of myself. Right? And maybe you don't either. But distraction is literally anything you do to kill the energy of a potentially dangerous situation. Distract might look like this. I work with another university in this area, and they have fraternities there. And a group of fraternity guys came up with a distraction that they all use with each other anytime something is about to go down. And it's literally tap them on the shoulder and say, Joe's got to talk to you. Joe's got to talk to you is code for stop doing this stupid thing that's going to get you in trouble, or us in trouble, or this chapter, or this house in trouble, and go cool off and play video games in this room that we designated. Now, but the campus as a whole doesn't know that that's what that means. They told me it. I'm not going to tell you who it is because they'll gave away our secret. But Joe wants to talk to you is a non-confrontational distraction, right? It's a way to totally distract from the energy of what's about to happen. Right? And they use this for if someone is being drunk, a drunken fool that's about to throw up on the dance floor. They use it if someone's about to light something on fire and have them violate the fire code. And they use it if someone's about to take advantage of someone who's too drunk, or if someone is getting abusive with their partner. And it is mutually understood, everyone in this fraternity has already agreed, they will abide when someone says, Joe is going to talk to you, they will abide the rules. And if they don't, there are social consequences for it. So, I don't know if yours has to be that official, right? One of the members of that fraternity told me his favorite intervention was, in particular, that sexual assault situation, that party situation where someone's trying to get that drunk person upstairs, trying to isolate them, take advantage of them, in a place where no one else can see, so it's a lot harder to intervene. He just goes with them. He just walks upstairs, tending not to get the hint, right? His intervention is literally being dumb. That is his distraction. He's like, oh, we're going to watch a movie? Awesome. Walks upstairs, eating popcorn. What are you guys doing? Doesn't get the hint. It's like, hey, we're trying to hook up here. Oh, you want to hook up the DVD player? Awesome, I'll do that. He's like, his intervention is to be the dumbest box of rocks that has ever lived. And it keeps the person safe. And what it doesn't do is let on that he knows what's going on. Distract can be helpful when we don't want to be confrontational, but we're willing to kind of stick our neck out there. A distraction, another campus that I used to work with, literally, someone was really worried about a situation. There was serious abuse, perhaps a fight about to break out. The person just said, I think your car is getting together. The person stopped what they're doing, holy crap, I gotta get my car. Leave. They come back in, they're mad, and it's like, sorry, I thought I saw your car. Right? I could have sworn somebody said it, they called the cops, somebody said that the car parked in the wrong spot. Whatever that person said, it killed the energy for that potential abuse to happen. And then acting kind of skeezy, could you just hang with him and make sure he doesn't do something stupid? All of a sudden, it counts just as much as someone else does it. You still get your gold star at the end of your life if someone else does it. The other thing delegate could potentially do is who's hosting the party? Who's has some sort of authority in that? Is it a bartender? Is it a bouncer? Is it somebody who isn't the police but does carry some weight or some authority? That person might be a good person to delegate to as well. Alright, so direct, distract, delegate. We've got enough time to practice this a couple of times. We'll get those songs back out and then we'll wrap up.
That was yes, for sure. Great.
I know. I'm using every last minute of your time. So here we go. So let's imagine a scenario where someone is being abusive in line at the movie theater. They're grabbing their partner, they're kind of screaming at them, and you are in front of them, so that you feel like you've got something off. Right? So, are you most likely giving your obstacles to be direct? Go to the perpetrator saying, you can't act that way, it's inappropriate. Go be direct with the victim. Ask them if they're okay. Maybe you try to get them out of the situation first and then ask if they're okay. Distract. Talk on your phone really loud in a general direction so everybody's looking. Or ask them what movie they're going to see, kind of, kind of dumb. Or delegate and get someone else involved and get the person behind the such as fit on you get you get a security officer, depending on the movie theater, get them involved. So which of these are you most likely to do? A lot of people direct the perpetrator, bold folks in here, distract, 18, delegate 18, 19. Alright. Here's the important thing. You might not believe, or when you see this happening, it might not cross a line for you, right? But for an awful lot of people, when someone sees someone being abused, in their gut they feel like somebody ought to do something. And what's important is that you try something. I can't guarantee you it's always going to work. But what we see up here is a lot of folks saying, I'm going to try something. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so this is that same party scenario that I talked about, Brian and I brought up a bunch of times. All right, so you've got a person that you don't know well taking one of your friends who's clearly too far under the influence up the stairs, potentially hitting damage on them, you're not really sure about the motivation. You know the person who's at risk. You don't know as well the person who's doing the action. Are you most likely to be direct with the perpetrator saying, you can't behave that way, this is unacceptable. You're going to hurt that person. Don't you realize that's great? Whatever it may be. Right? Direct with the victim. Ask them, are you okay? Seems like, or even more, you seem like maybe you've had a bit too many. I want to get you out of here. Distract. This is where you follow them upstairs. Tell them that their car is being towed. Tell them that everyone's going to get food and nobody can stick around. Or delegate you up, ask one of their friends. Hey, friend, looks like they're engaged. Why don't you get on here? A lot of people saying they're willing to be direct with the perpetrator. Okay? Thinking about your obstacles, that might be true. Again, most of you all are athletes, you guys here are big dudes, right? And so, what I might say is you are in that camp. You're saying you're willing to be direct with the perpetrator. Be someone who could be someone's delegated. So if you're willing to be direct with the perpetrator, maybe someone might say, I'm really uncomfortable, you go and say something to this guy. Be open to that. Be willing to do that. Alright, one last one on the list. Last one. You're out at a bar. You're all student athletes, I'm sure you don't actually go to bars. I just have to put it in there just for an example. You're out at a bar and you see someone put something in someone else's drink. You're not 100% sure what it is. But something dropped in the drink tonight, right? Then like a diamond. Or like, I don't know, like that. Unless they're like composed to them and why they're composed to them, that was CDR. There's a lot of detail in here. Could go around. Right? Are you most comfortable being direct with the perpetrator when I saw that? So you do that, you do that. Are you most likely to be direct with the victim? Hey, I saw someone put something in your drink. Well, distract you. Just spilling the drink. Literally just spilling it. And then, like, oh God, sorry. Oh God, so sorry. I'm just such a butterfinger. Next Delegate. Tell the bartender, tell the bouncer. Somebody just put stuff in these drinks here, and you really ought to be rolling on. A lot of people rolling in, a lot of things rolling in. All right, that's our last scenario. I have one counter question left. Blast that real fast. Good job. How likely is it that you will do something when you see a situation like this happen? How likely is it when you see sexual assault, potentially hate crimes, the earliest warning signs that you might do something? It's not very likely that I'll think about it. Very likely 152, 657, probably 152, 669. I'll try something eventually 1253, 041. Not very likely I'll think about 153, 052. As these start to roll in, I want you to think about where we started the evening. Where we started the evening was when I asked the question, where's your hope? How much do you believe we can actually reduce incidents of sexual violence and hate crimes? We have a vast majority of people in this room who are answering, saying they're very likely or probably going to do something. When we started, we had a lot of people saying, it's unlikely, but we should try. We had a lot of people saying, hopeful, I'm hopeful, but doubtful that we can make it. Because what you all are going to do, this campus community is going to be safer. Don't take that responsibility lightly. I know I've worn out your attention. You're all starting to talk. And you've kept up your attention pretty well. I really appreciate it. Because what we need is you. I don't know about Brian. I don't get invited to the college parties anymore to be given a dinner. It'd be sort of awkward for me to see me there dressed like this. Watch out, folks. You know, like I picture myself all of a sudden having like an opportunity voice. I need you because you're going to be there. I will be. So I challenge myself. Let's start talking. I know this way. I know this way. We have, go to the catalyst next one. We have a couple of solutions to this when you want to see for you to decide how you do it. We thank you for your time and we hope that you have a great semester.
You're not done, you're not done, you're not done.
Have a seat. If your pocket is a little faster, please be quiet. Thank you. I'm going to tell a quick story. It won't take very long, but I think that's going to be a point. We're going to go through this. You might want to relax. A little faster if you're quiet. So recently, this one is so creative. I've heard it all the whole time. Yes, you're so creative. So recently, those of you who know me know that I don't want to have children, and you know that I don't want to have children because kids are a lot of work and they're a lot of worry. Instead, I took in my 17-year-old niece, who is a senior, and she's now living with me. I went from nothing to a 17-year-old. Holy crap. But she came to me from suburban America with an actual white picket fence around her neighborhood. A place where you could leave the cars unlocked and you have to drive everywhere. There's no buses, there's no panhandlers, there's none of that. She's moved into an apartment in Lakewood, close to downtown. And I have been challenged with trying to explain to a 17-year-old why she just can't walk around willy-nilly, like freely, okay? And I'm trying to explain this to her and not scare the SH out of her. So there's really no way to do that. Like, hey, like, you can't do these things, you can't do these things, you can't, I'll share this, I can't. So then on Sunday, I got an alert at 11 o'clock that something bad happened on this campus, followed by a phone call that I knew the person that something bad happened to on this campus. So then I make the phone call in front of
Kayla and had a conversation with the person who something bad happened to. And all of a sudden I realized I didn't have to tell Kayla anything anymore. She finally got it because I was talking to the victim of exactly what had happened. You guys know that person? And if you come to find out, there were other victims among us this weekend. So 3 of our community have been endangered this weekend. This is not to scare you, this is to make you more aware. So pull out that sheet of paper that I gave you at the very beginning. Okay? Here it is. There's a couple of things on there. First of all, doesn't require talking. First of all, there's a new app called Lightning Shield. You can download that app to your phone. You no longer have to dial 911 to reach campus safety. You just need that app, and it goes directly to Cleveland State Police. It also gives them the ability to locate you. Okay? So you can now bypass, if you were to call 911, it would route you to the Cleveland dispatcher. They'd have to go from the Cleveland Police Department to the Cleveland State Police Department, and then get somebody to you. This is a one-button push to Cleveland State Police. Okay? 2, on the sheet of paper, if you're not aware, you can always have a 24/7 police escort on this campus if you want one. Those of you who get off a truck, a bus, a van, or whatever, and at 2 in the morning, carrying 4 pairs of shoes, 3 uniforms, 2 outfits, a book bag, a laptop, an iPad, an iPhone, whatever, money, are sitting ducks. Call campus safety. Have a police escort. Ask your coach. Say, hey coach, could we get an escort for our team? Some teams already do this. Lastly, if you see something, you guys report it. See something, say something. Use that app. You can anonymously report crimes or incidents through this app on your phone. If you see something, take a picture of it. Send the picture in. You're good. Okay, so see something, say something, put the phone number in your favorites, download the app, buddy up, look around, take your headphones off, don't text when you cross the street, be safe, take a shower, eat your breakfast, sleep at night. Okay. Alright, can't study, right? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Ladies. Okay, great. You don't need one. Ladies only. Ladies only. Come see me tomorrow. Ladies only. Belle?
I don't know who is.
You don't need one. Ladies only. Here you go, ladies.
It's all right. I'll find it.
You're good. I'll make a note. I don't know what they're gonna do.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
Did you get one?